She missed the mating ceremony to help a stranger. The next day, the Alpha King came looking for her. Birds stirred in the trees, and the faint rustle of leaves whispered of a day destined to be remembered. Deep within the forest, Alara moved swiftly, her bare feet brushing against moss and roots. She was late. Her heart beat with panic and guilt. Today was meant to be the day of the mating ceremony, the day she was to be presented before the Alpha King and the court. It was a day of destiny, a day her whole life had led toward, yet she was nowhere near the palace. Instead, she had found herself following a trail of blood that glimmered faintly in the morning mist. Her hands shook as she pushed through brambles, driven by the desperate cries that reached her ears. In the shadow of a giant oak she found him, a stranger, young and battered, lying in the damp grass. His cloak was torn and his breathing came in shallow, uneven gasps. "Alara," the man whispered, his voice weak but strangely familiar. Though she had never met him, something in his tone made her heart constrict. She dropped to her knees beside him, brushing the damp hair from his forehead. "I have to help you," she said softly, her own fear of defying the ceremony trembling in her chest. "I can't leave you here." The stranger coughed, and his hand, surprisingly strong, gripped hers. There was a strange weight in his gaze, something ancient, something that recognized her in a way no one ever had. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew she was risking everything. If the Alpha King learned she had missed the mating ceremony, punishment would follow, but she could not abandon him. Compassion, stubborn and fierce, ran through her veins stronger than fear. Hours passed as she tended to his wounds with careful hands, using herbs and bandages she had prepared earlier in the morning. The forest was quiet, as if holding its breath, allowing her to work in peace. She cleaned his cuts, bound his leg with strips of cloth, and murmured encouragement, though the truth was that she too felt broken, torn between duty and desire, between fear and instinct. By midday, he was able to sit, leaning weakly against the oak. He regarded her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Why would you risk everything for a stranger?" he asked, voice hoarse. Alara swallowed hard. She had asked herself the same question countless times since she had left her home that morning. "Because it is right," she said simply. "Because I could not live with myself if I did not try to help." The stranger gave a faint smile, and something in that smile made her heart ache. It was not gratitude alone. There was recognition. There was understanding. But the forest's shadows grew long, and the realization struck her like ice. She had wasted too much time. The mating ceremony had begun without her. The kingdom, her family, the Alpha King, all would be expecting her. They would know she was gone. They would see her absence as defiance. Fear tightened its grip around her heart, sharp and unforgiving. She glanced at the stranger, who seemed oblivious to the threat that now loomed over them. He looked at her as if he understood, as if he had been waiting for her all along. "We should move," she said finally. "I need to get back before it's too late." But the stranger shook his head weakly. "I cannot walk yet," he said. "Stay, please." Alara's heart twisted. Staying meant missing the ceremony entirely. Moving meant leaving him, perhaps to die. She closed her eyes, pressed her forehead to her hands, and tried to breathe. She could not let him die. Not like this. Not when she could help. The day passed slowly, sunlight filtering through the thick canopy, casting gold and shadow across their small sanctuary. Alara felt every tick of the clock, every heartbeat like a drum inside her chest. She imagined the palace, the proud figures of the Alpha King and the council, the banners fluttering in the wind, all waiting for her. But here she was, kneeling in the dirt, tying bandages and whispering to a stranger whose life now rested in her hands. Finally, the stranger stirred. He tried to sit upright but fell back against the tree. She caught him before he could collapse. "Why do you care so much?" he asked, voice trembling with pain. Alara looked into his eyes, searching for the answer. "Because no life is worth less than another," she said, her voice firm though her hands shook. Because Because if I abandon you, I abandon myself as well." For a long moment he studied her. Then his hand reached up to brush her cheek. It was light, almost a whisper, but it sent a shiver through her. The contact was electric, a current that neither of them could fully name yet. It made her heart race and her mind spin, but she could not let herself linger on it. Not now. Night fell and the forest darkened. Stars peeked through the trees, distant and cold. The sounds of nocturnal creatures surrounded them, and yet in that small clearing it was as if time had stopped. They existed only for each other. "I should have gone to the ceremony," Alara admitted, her voice low. "I should have obeyed, I should have." She stopped herself, biting her lip. The guilt was sharp, a knife pressing against her ribs. The stranger shook his head. "No," he whispered. "You did what you were meant to do. Sometimes the right path is not the one others choose for you." Alara's heart tightened. Was he speaking truth, or was he comforting her because he had no other choice? She did not know. But his words felt like a balm, softening the edges of the fear and anger gnawing at her soul. Hours later, exhausted, she finally lay down beside him, keeping one watchful eye on the forest. Sleep was uneasy, haunted by visions of the palace, of the Alpha King's dark eyes searching for her, and by the stranger's frail, steady breathing. Even in her dreams, she could not escape the pull of destiny waiting for her in the citadel. Morning came, pale and trembling, casting thin beams of light across the forest floor. Alara awoke to find the stranger looking at her, his face calm, almost serene. But his gaze held an unspoken warning, a hint of secrets yet to be revealed. "Alara," he said, barely a whisper. "You cannot stay here forever. They will come for you. He will come for you." Her stomach lurched. "He? Who?" The stranger's eyes darkened, and for a moment Alara felt a chill that seemed to seep into her bones. "The Alpha King," he said. "Kale. He knows you more than you think, and now he will come." Alara's breath caught. Kale, the Alpha King, the very one whose eyes would pierce through lies, whose judgment would fall swift and final. She had never imagined meeting him like this, not here in the wilds, not after defying the sacred ceremony. Fear and adrenaline surged together, making her hands shake. But beneath it, something deeper stirred, a strange thrill, a pulse of curiosity, and something dangerously like longing. She had never faced anyone like him, and the thought of the inevitable encounter both terrified and fascinated her. I have to go," she said, rising to her feet. Her legs were stiff, her body aching, but determination sharpened her resolve. He will come, and I cannot hide forever." The stranger reached out, weak but firm. "Then you will need to be ready," he said. "More than you realize. The path ahead, it will change you." Alara nodded, swallowing hard. She did not know what lay ahead, only that the world she had known, the world of safety, routine, and careful obedience, was gone. She had stepped into something larger, something dangerous, something that might break her or make her stronger than she had ever imagined. She glanced once more at the stranger whose life she had saved, and then turned toward the forest's edge, toward the path that would lead her inevitably to the Alpha King. The wind whispered through the trees, as if carrying a warning, a promise, and a challenge all at once. As she walked, a shadow moved in the distance. She froze, heart hammering. A single figure cloaked in darkness and power watched her from the tree line. Kale, the Alpha King, had come, and for the first time Alara realized that defying destiny had not freed her, it had called it. Her pulse raced, her breath caught, and her hands tightened into fists. The world she had known was gone. The forest, the stranger, her life before this morning, all of it had vanished into memory. Now only one thing remained, facing the Alpha King. Her heart trembled, not with fear alone, but with something deeper, something that whispered of challenges, of longing, and of a story that had only just begun. And in the shadows, Kale's eyes burned like fire, unblinking, unyielding, and utterly aware that she was the one he had come to find. The morning mist clung to the edges of the forest as Alara stepped cautiously onto the worn path that led to the palace. Her legs ached from the long night, and her hands were still trembling from the encounter with the stranger. But she had no time to pause. Every step drew her closer to the citadel, and with it, the certainty that the Alpha King, Kale, was already searching for her. The palace loomed ahead, a fortress of stone and shadow. Its towers rose like dark sentinels against the pale sky, and banners embroidered with the symbol of the Alpha fluttered in the chilly morning wind. The city surrounding it was quiet, almost eerily still, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. Alara's heart pounded with fear. The mating ceremony had been missed, and she knew the consequences could be severe. Whispers of punishment and exile lingered in her mind, warnings passed down from childhood. Yet beneath the fear, there was something else, a strange thrill that made her chest tighten. Something about Kale had stirred her in a way she could not name, even before she had seen him. As she approached the massive gates, the courtyard opened before her, empty and silent except for the soft crunch of her boots on the stone. And then, as if summoned by her thoughts, he appeared. Kale. He stood tall, cloaked in black and silver, the emblem of his alpha status gleaming faintly in the morning light. His dark hair fell in precise waves around his sharp features, and his eyes that seemed to see through to the very soul, locked onto her immediately. There was no anger, no fury at first sight, only recognition and something more. "Alara," he said, his voice low, steady, and commanding. Every syllable seemed to echo through the courtyard, leaving no corner of the space untouched. Her legs stiffened and her breath caught. She had expected punishment, scolding, or anger, but not this calm intensity. "Kale," she whispered, almost in disbelief. He stepped closer, the ground seeming to bend beneath the weight of his presence. The silence between them was heavy, charged with tension neither could fully explain. He was the Alpha, the ruler whose words shaped kingdoms, yet here he was, scrutinizing her like a man seeking the truth of her soul. "You missed the mating ceremony," he said, his tone measured. Not anger, not judgment, but a statement that carried the weight of mountains. "Explain." Alara's throat felt dry. She searched his eyes for any hint of leniency, and in that search she found something that made her heart both ache and race, a glimmer of curiosity, perhaps even admiration. She took a deep breath. I could not attend," she said finally. "There was someone who needed my help, a stranger wounded in the forest. I could not leave him to die." Kale's gaze did not falter. If anything, it sharpened. He stepped closer still, so close that she could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. "You defied destiny for a stranger," he said, almost more to himself than to her. "You risked everything for compassion." Alara swallowed, her hands clenched at her sides. "I would do it again," she said, voice trembling slightly but firm, "because it is the right thing to do. Because I could not live with myself if I did not." For a moment, Kale said nothing. He studied her, his eyes piercing, trying to uncover the layers she had so carefully built around herself. Then he spoke, softer this time. "Courage," he murmured, "and foolishness. You carry both in equal measure." The words made her chest tighten. He could see her so clearly, see through the careful defenses she had placed around herself. Fear mixed with a strange thrill, and she realized with a shiver that she did not want him to look away. "Come inside," he said finally. "There will be consequences, but first, you need to understand what you have done and what awaits you." The palace gates opened and Alara stepped inside. The hall was grand, filled with tapestries depicting the history of the Alpha line, of kings and queens who had ruled with iron will and fierce wisdom. The air was heavy with the scent of polished stone and incense, and every echo of their footsteps seemed to amplify the weight of the moment. Kale led her through the corridors, his presence a constant reminder of the power he wielded. He did not speak much, yet every glance he cast her way carried meaning. She felt exposed under his scrutiny, yet strangely protected. The mix of fear and fascination twisted inside her like a living thing. They reached a chamber that opened onto a balcony overlooking the city below. The wind swept past, tugging at Alara's hair, and for a moment the world outside seemed distant, small, and insignificant. Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You must understand," he said, voice soft but firm, "that missing the mating ceremony is not simply a personal choice. It affects the entire kingdom. Every line of succession, every alliance, every oath we hold, it is all connected." Alara's gaze dropped to the floor, guilt coiling tightly in her stomach. "I know," she whispered, "and I do not regret helping him. I could not. But I fear what you will do to me." Kale's eyes softened just for a fraction of a second. Then he took a step closer and she felt the weight of his presence more acutely than ever before. "Punishment is not always about anger," he said. "Sometimes it is about understanding, and sometimes it is about testing." Alara looked up, startled. "Testing?" "Testing?" she echoed. "Yes," he said. "You will face trials, Alara, trials that will challenge your courage, your loyalty, your heart. And in the process, you may discover more about yourself than you ever imagined." Her pulse quickened. Trials. She had heard of them in stories, whispers of ancient customs meant to shape those chosen by the Alpha line. They were dangerous, exhausting, and demanding. But something in Kale's eyes, something that flickered like fire beneath the dark calm, made her realize that the trials would also be revealing. They would not just test her, they would test him, and the bond forming between them. Do you always make people face danger to teach them lessons?" she asked, voice small but steady. Kale's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Only those who are worth the risk," he said. His gaze lingered on her, intense and unflinching. "And you have proven worth far beyond what I expected. Even by defying destiny itself, you have shown a strength many kings envy." Alara felt her cheeks warm. Strength, worth. She had never heard words like that spoken to her, not with such seriousness, not from someone whose power could crush her in an instant. She wanted to speak, to argue, to flee, but the pull between them was too strong. Her fear and fascination tangled together, leaving her breathless. The sound of footsteps interrupted the moment. Kale's eyes darkened, a shadow of command passing over his features. Guards moved swiftly along the corridor, but he did not flinch. Instead, he turned back to her. "The world outside this palace is not safe," he said. "And neither is your heart if you are not careful. I will show you what it means to choose, to fight, to accept your own destiny. And by the time I am finished, you may understand why the path you abandoned was never truly yours to leave." Alara's stomach twisted. His words were heavy with power, warning, and something more. Something unspoken, threading itself into the silence between them. She did not fully understand, and yet she sensed the truth in them. Whatever lay ahead, it would not be easy. It would demand everything of her, courage, loyalty, and a willingness to confront her deepest fears. Kale extended his hand, a silent command and an offer at once. "Come with me," he said. "If you are ready to face the trials, and if you are ready to face me." Alara hesitated. Her mind screamed at her to resist, to flee, to escape the shadow of the Alpha King and the weight of a destiny she had once thought she could avoid. But the pull of curiosity, of longing, and of something deeper she could not name drew her forward. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The moment their fingers touched, a current of electricity ran through her. It was not fear alone, nor admiration alone, but something ancient, something binding. Her heartbeat echoed in her chest as if in resonance with his. And in that resonance, she felt the first stirrings of a bond neither of them fully understood yet. Outside, the city lay silent, unaware that the Alpha King had found the one who had defied destiny. Inside the palace, the first threads of a story, one of courage, challenge, and a connection that neither time nor rules could break, began to weave themselves into existence. And somewhere in the shadows of the balcony and the halls beyond, the winds whispered of trials, tests, and choices that would change everything. Kale's eyes remained fixed on hers, unblinking, unyielding. "The path ahead will not be easy," he said softly, almost a whisper. "But if you survive it, you may find the truth of who you are and what you are capable of." Alara's breath caught. The palace, the city, the world itself seemed to shrink to the space between them. Fear, excitement, and an unnameable longing twisted together inside her. She had stepped into something larger than herself, something dangerous and beautiful. And she knew, without a doubt, that there would be no turning back. The trials had begun. The first light of dawn barely touched the edges of the palace as Alara followed Kale through a long, shadowed corridor. Every step echoed softly, and the walls seemed to whisper with secrets of those who had walked before them. Her palms were damp with nerves, and yet her heart pulsed with anticipation. The trials he had spoken of were not distant promises, they were real, and she would face them. Kale led her to a massive door carved from dark stone. Ancient runes glowed faintly along its edges, pulsing with an eerie light. "This is the Hall of Trials," he said, voice calm yet commanding. "Every step inside will test your courage, your loyalty, and your heart. There is no turning back." Alara swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her bag. She could not see inside, but she felt the weight of magic, of power, pressing against the door. I am ready," she whispered, though fear coiled tight in her chest. Kale's eyes softened briefly, almost imperceptibly. "Good," he said. "Then step forward, and remember, your choices here will define not only you, but the path we may walk together." Alara's fingers trembled as she pushed the door open. A gust of cold air swept through, carrying with it the scent of earth, fire, and something ancient she could not name. She stepped inside, and the door closed behind her with a solid, final thud. Darkness enveloped her, but it was not empty. Shapes moved in the shadows, shifting, testing. The first trial came swiftly. A corridor of mirrors stretched endlessly before her. As she stepped forward, her reflection multiplied, twisting into forms she did not recognize. Some were fearful, others angry, others sorrowful. Each reflection whispered accusations and doubts, voices that sounded like her own, yet carried a venom she could barely withstand. Alara stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, I am not afraid," she shouted, trying to ground herself. Her own voice rang out, a steady anchor in the storm of illusions. Step by step, she pressed forward, each mirror reflecting not only her fear but also her courage. Finally, she reached the end. A single mirror remained, unbroken, unyielding. When she looked into it, she saw herself as she truly was, strong, compassionate, and unafraid to risk everything for what was right. Tears pricked at her eyes, and for the first time in days, she felt a surge of pride. She had faced the first trial not by avoiding fear but by acknowledging it. A voice echoed through the hall, deep and resonant. "Well done, Alara." She spun around. Kale had stepped through the shadows silently, his presence both commanding and comforting. His gaze held hers, intense, as if he were measuring the depth of her soul. "You passed the first test," he said, "but the path only grows harder from here." Alara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I understand." The second trial began without warning. The floor beneath her shifted, and suddenly she was no longer in the mirror corridor but standing at the edge of a deep, shadowed chasm. A narrow bridge stretched across it, disappearing into mist. The wind howled around her, and distant growls echoed from below. Fear knotted in her stomach, but she forced herself to step forward. With each step, the bridge trembled, threatening to collapse. She could hear whispers of doubt, taunts of weakness, and visions of failure flashing before her eyes. Her hands shook, and her heart raced. Yet she pressed on, focusing not on the abyss below but on the faint light at the other side. Halfway across, the bridge swayed violently. A shadow lunged toward her, an indistinct shape with eyes like fire. Alara stumbled, heart hammering. The shadow spoke, its voice echoing in her mind. "Turn back, you are not worthy." "No," she cried, "I am worthy." She took a deep breath and steadied herself. Step by step, she moved forward, each footfall a declaration of her resolve. At last, she reached the other side, collapsing onto solid ground. Exhaustion threatened to overtake her, but she pushed it aside. She had survived the second trial. Cale appeared again, his eyes dark with intensity. "You are stronger than I expected," he said. "And yet strength alone is not enough." Alara looked up at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "You must also face the trial of the heart," he said, his voice softening. "A trial that will demand not only courage, but trust, compassion, and the willingness to confront your deepest fears." Before she could speak, the ground shifted again, and she found herself in a dense forest, moonlight filtering through the twisted trees. In the distance, a figure moved, dark, silent, familiar. Her heart skipped. The stranger from the forest, the one she had saved, stood before her, but now he appeared changed. His eyes glowed faintly, and a shadow seemed to cling to him. He spoke, his voice both a comfort and a challenge. "Why did you leave me?" he asked, pain lacing his tone. Alara stepped forward, reaching out. "I did not leave you," she said. "I stayed with you. I saved you. I could not abandon you." The shadowed figure shook his head, and the darkness around him seemed to pulse. "You chose duty over destiny," he said. "You chose the life you thought was right, but at what cost?" Alara's chest tightened. She realized that this trial was not about strength or skill. It was about her heart, about the choices she had made, about confronting the consequences of compassion and defiance. She took a deep breath. "I would do it again," she said firmly. "Because helping others, because following my heart, that is who I am." The shadow lifted and the figure smiled faintly, the light returning to his eyes. "Then you understand," he said, "and you are ready for what comes next." The forest dissolved, replaced by the throne room of the palace. Cale stood at the center, his eyes locked on hers. "You have faced the trials of courage and heart," he said, "but there is one final test. One that will determine not only your place in this kingdom, but the bond between us." Alara's stomach twisted. "What is it?" Cale stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet grounding. "You must confront the truth of your destiny," he said. "The path you abandoned was not yours to forsake entirely, and the choices you make now will shape not only your future but the fate of this kingdom." Her breath caught. Destiny, fate. The words carried weight, heavier than any she had ever known. She had thought herself free, that by helping a stranger she had chosen her own path. But now she saw that every choice, every act of courage had brought her here to this moment, to stand before the Alpha King and face the final trial. Cale extended his hand, a gesture of both command and trust. "Step forward, Alara," he said softly, "and face what must be faced, knowing that whatever comes, you will not be alone." Alara hesitated, heart racing, then placed her hand in his. A warmth spread through her, not just physical but something deeper, something ancient and binding. The trial was not over, not yet. But in that moment she felt a connection that defied fear, that promised strength beyond her own understanding. Suddenly the walls of the throne room shifted, dark tendrils of shadow weaving through the air. Figures emerged, indistinct yet threatening, whispering doubts, fears, and regrets. Alara's grip on Cale's hand tightened, anchoring her. She realized that this was the final test, not just courage, not just heart, but the courage to trust, to believe, and to face the darkness together. Step by step, they moved forward, side by side. The shadows lunged and swirled, but with every step, Alara felt herself growing stronger, drawing power not from herself alone, but from the bond she shared with Cale. The whispers faded, the shadows recoiled, and light began to pierce the darkness. At last they reached the center of the room, where a pedestal glowed with soft, golden light. Upon it rested a single crystal, pulsing gently. Cale's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "This crystal represents your choice," he said. "To accept your destiny, to embrace your strength, and to walk forward with me as your equal, or to turn away and leave this path forever." Alara's heart pounded. She looked at Kale, at the light, at the shadowed past, and the uncertain future. Fear and longing warred within her, but she knew the truth. Helping others, facing trials, defying expectations, this was who she was, and she could not turn away now. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. Her hand reached for the crystal, and a warmth spread through her, merging with the strength she had discovered in the trials. Kale's hand covered hers, steady, supportive, and strong. Together they lifted the crystal, and a wave of light swept through the throne room, dissolving shadows, lifting doubts, and leaving only clarity, courage, and connection. Kale's eyes softened as he gazed at her. "You have done well," he said, "far beyond what I ever imagined." Alara's breath caught. She had faced courage, heart, and destiny, and survived. And in the process, she had discovered not only her own strength, but the beginnings of a bond with the Alpha King that neither time nor trial could break. Outside, the palace walls stood tall and silent, but inside, a story of courage, trust, and connection had begun. One that would shape the kingdom, their hearts, and the world beyond the shadowed halls. The trials were over, but the journey had only just begun. The golden light of dawn spilled across the palace, illuminating its towers with warmth and promise. Alara stood on the balcony, the morning breeze tugging at her hair. She had faced the trials, survived the shadows, and discovered strength she had never known she possessed. Yet even now, standing before the city she was born to protect, she could not shake the weight of the choices she had made. Kale appeared behind her, silent as the wind, his presence filling the space with an unspoken power. His dark eyes, once distant and commanding, now held something softer, almost reverent. He did not speak immediately, letting the morning sun wash over them both. "You have done well," he said at last, voice low but steady. "You faced courage, heart, and destiny. Few could endure what you have endured." Alara turned to him, her chest still tight with lingering tension. "It was not easy," she admitted. I doubted myself at every step. I thought I would fail." Kale took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Doubt does not make you weak," he said. "It makes you human, and it is precisely that humanity, that compassion, which sets you apart. It is why you survived when others might have fallen." Her heart ached at his words, the praise and recognition striking her like sunlight through a storm. She wanted to look away, to hide her trembling hands, but she could not. Not from him, not now. "The kingdom," she began, hesitating. "I fear what will come. The council, the people, they will not forgive my absence at the ceremony. They may see me as reckless or unworthy." Kale's expression hardened slightly, though not with anger. Instead, it carried the weight of experience, of knowledge only he could hold. "The council may judge you," he said. "The people may whisper, but your choices, your courage, and your heart, they are beyond their understanding. You did not abandon destiny, you shaped it." Alara's breath caught. Shaping destiny. She had never imagined her actions could carry such power. The trials had taught her more than courage, had shown her that strength and compassion could coexist, that defiance could be as meaningful as obedience. Kale extended his hand, a gesture of both command and trust. "There is one final choice, Alara," he said softly. "A choice only you can make. The path before you is no longer dictated by ceremony or expectation. You may return to the life you knew, or you may walk forward with me as an equal, shaping the future of this kingdom together." Alara's gaze met his. Her mind raced with thoughts of freedom, of safety, of the simple life she had once imagined. And yet, the bond she had formed with Kale, forged in trials of shadow and heart, held her fast. She realized that the life she had left behind would never be the same, nor would she. I cannot turn back," she said finally, voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Not after everything I have faced, not after discovering who I am and who we could be together." Kale's eyes softened, a rare smile touching his lips. "Then we walk forward together," he said, offering her his hand. "Not as ruler and subject, but as equals. strong, unbroken, and ready to face whatever comes. Alara placed her hand in his, feeling a warmth that went beyond the physical, a connection that spoke of trust, understanding, and something ancient, something predestined. The kingdom spread before them, vast and full of promise, yet also fragile and scarred. Together, they could face it all. The first challenge came as the palace gates opened to the city below. Citizens gathered, eyes wide with curiosity and whispers of gossip. Many had heard of her absence at the mating ceremony, and all had awaited the Alpha King's judgment. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Kale and Alara descended the grand staircase, hand in hand. Kale raised his voice, carrying it with authority that silenced the murmurs. "This woman," he said, his gaze unwavering, "has faced trials that few could endure. She did not abandon her duty, she embraced a higher form of it, showing courage, compassion, and strength beyond what we have seen in generations. Alara has earned her place, not through ceremony alone, but through her actions and her heart." A hush fell over the crowd. Some faces reflected awe, others disbelief, and a few remained skeptical. Yet even the harshest eyes could not deny the courage that radiated from her, the quiet authority that now accompanied Kale's acknowledgement. Alara felt her cheeks warm, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. She bowed her head slightly, not out of submission, but in acknowledgement of the responsibility she now carried. Kale's hand squeezed hers gently, grounding her, reminding her that she was not alone in this. "Together," Kale continued, "we will face the challenges that come. Together, we will protect this kingdom, its people, and the legacy we hold. And together, we will build a future worthy of all that we have fought for." Alara raised her gaze, meeting his eyes with unwavering resolve. "Together," she echoed. The people watched in silence, the weight of the moment sinking into their hearts. And in that silence, the first whispers of respect began to ripple through the crowd. The story of defiance, courage, and heart was more powerful than any ceremony. It was real and it was theirs. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Kale and Alara walked side by side. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the soft rustle of leaves seemed to echo the heartbeat of the kingdom itself. "You have changed," Kale said, voice soft, almost reflective. "Not just in strength but in understanding. The trials, they reveal not only the courage of the body but the depth of the heart, and yours is remarkable." Alara felt a shiver at his words, a warmth that spread through her chest. "I could not have done it alone," she said. "You guided me, trusted me, and believed in me even when I doubted myself." Kale stopped, turning to face her fully. "And I will continue to trust you," he said. "Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Every step we take forward, every challenge we face, I choose you." Alara's heart ached with the weight of the moment, the clarity of his words binding her soul. She reached out, placing a hand gently on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. "And I choose you," she whispered. The wind picked up, sweeping through the garden, carrying with it a sense of promise. The trials had been more than tests of strength or courage, had been a forging fire, shaping both of them, intertwining their fates. They had survived darkness, shadows, and doubt, and now they stood together, ready to face the future as equals. But even in this moment of triumph, Alara knew the kingdom would continue to test them. Challenges would arise, decisions would weigh heavily, and power would demand sacrifices. Yet with Kale by her side, she felt capable of facing anything. The sun rose higher, casting a golden light over the palace and the city below. Alara and Kale stood on the balcony once more, hands intertwined, eyes forward, hearts steady. They were no longer bound solely by ceremony or prophecy. They were bound by choice, by courage, and by a bond that had been tested in fire and shadow. "Whatever comes," Kale said, voice low but firm, "we will face it together, and no darkness, no trial can break what we have forged." Alara nodded, feeling a sense of peace and determination she had never known. Together, she repeated, the word echoing in her heart. And in that moment, the kingdom itself seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the strength and unity of the two who would shape its future. Their story, born of defiance, courage, compassion, and trials, was only just beginning. The palace gates opened again, but this time not with fear or judgment. Instead, the people watched, silent but hopeful, as their Alpha King and his equal walked forward, ready to face whatever the world might bring. And above the city, the morning sun cast its light across the kingdom, a promise of hope, renewal, and a future forged together, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The trials were behind them, but the journey had only just begun. And in the bond they shared, Alara and Kale knew they could face anything, conquer any shadow, and shape a destiny that was truly their own. The kingdom, once steeped in ceremony and expectation, now witnessed a new beginning, one born of courage, heart, and the unyielding power of choice. And together they stepped into it.